Welcome back to Teenage Nightmares, the place that drags you deeper into the world of the unknown. Tonight's chilling tale takes us deep into the icy heart of the winter of 1997, a story of solitude, survival, and something far more sinister lurking in the cold. So grab your headphones, settle in, and prepare yourself for the camp out, a terrifying winter story you won't soon forget. Hello, my name is Kent. This story takes place in the bitter winter of 1997. I was 20 years old, a college dropout, and drowning in depression. Moving back in with my parents only made things worse. I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell I was doing with my life. So, I packed up my truck, grabbed some gear, and headed deep into the forest for a few days of camping. I thought the solitude might clear my head. I had no idea it would become the worst night of my life. I drove an hour into the forest, the snow-lined roads growing narrower and quieter the farther I went. Another 30 minutes of searching finally led me to the perfect spot, a secluded clearing surrounded by towering evergreens. My truck, with its camper shell, would double as my shelter for the night. After parking, I hopped out, the crisp winter air biting at my face, and set to work building a small fire. The flames crackled to life, casting flickering shadows against the trees as I prepared dinner. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace, the weight of my real-world problems momentarily lifting in the stillness of the woods. I sat on the tailgate of my truck, savoring the warmth of my steak dinner and the quiet beauty of the snow-covered evergreens. The crackle of the campfire and the stillness of the forest felt strangely comforting. But just as I was getting ready to extinguish the fire and crawl into the camper for the night, I froze, as faint footsteps echoed from somewhere in the distance. Probably just other campers, I muttered under my breath, trying to convince myself, but deep down, unease crept in. Whether it was another human, an animal, or something worse, the fact remained: I wasn't alone. The thought sent a chill through me, and not because of the winter air. I wasn't prepared for company, human or otherwise. My only means of defense was a Rambo-style knife tucked in my gear, hardly reassuring. Shaking off my nerves, I climbed into the camper and closed the door behind me. I pulled out my portable crank radio, hoping to distract myself with some late-night talk radio. I tuned into an AM station that aired spooky stories, a questionable choice in hindsight, but those tales had always lulled me to sleep. As I settled in, the sound of static and eerie voice of the talk show host filled the camper, mixing uneasily with the silence outside. About an hour had passed when I heard it, a faint shuffling noise right outside my truck. My chest tightened as I strained to listen, the sound unmistakable against the stillness of the forest. By now the night had settled into an oppressive darkness. Plus, with the camper windows being heavily tinted and fogged from the cold, there was no view of what was out there. Then I heard him breathing, slow, deliberate, and close. Far too close. My heart pounded in my chest, each thud echoing in my ears as unease turned into raw fear. Whoever, or whatever it was, they were right outside my truck. I reached for my knife, gripping it tightly as adrenaline surged through me. My knuckles turned white, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. All I could do was sit there, knife in hand, and wait for whatever came next. About 20 minutes passed, and nothing happened. The silence stretched on, and I began to wonder if it was just a curious animal drawn by the scent of my steak dinner. The thought put me a little more at ease. I cranked up the radio and laid back down, trying to shake off the lingering unease. But then, without warning, my truck began to shake violently. My stomach dropped as all the fear came rushing back. Before I could react, my worst nightmare unfolded. The large glass window at the back of the camper shattered with a deafening crash. Shards of glass scattered everywhere, and standing there, framed by the broken window, was a dark figure. The man was tall and broad, his hefty frame silhouetted against the faint moonlight. His long, black hair clung to his face, and for a moment, he just stared at me. I screamed at him to leave, my voice cracking with panic, but he didn't flinch. Instead, He began fumbling with the tailgate, trying to open it. That's when it hit me. There was no reasoning with him. If I didn't act now, I wouldn't survive. My pulse thundered in my ears as I grabbed the knife I'd kept nearby. With adrenaline surging through me, I lunged toward the window. I swung the blade wildly, catching him by surprise, and kicked with everything I had. My boot connected with his face, and he fell backward into the snow with a grunt. I didn't wait to see if he would get up. I turned and bolted, my breath steaming in the cold air as I sprinted toward the forest. Behind me, I heard him scrambling to his feet, his heavy boots crunching through the snow as he began to chase me. He chased me for what felt like hours. The sound of his heavy boots crunching through the snow were never too far behind. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like they'd give out any second. Desperation forced me to stop. I ducked behind a tree, pressing my back against the rough bark as I tried to catch my breath. The night was deathly quiet except for his steady footsteps growing closer. I gripped my knife tighter, my knuckles white. Running wouldn't work anymore. I was out of energy, and he'd never stop. If I was going to survive, I had to fight. I braced myself, waiting, every nerve in my body on edge. Then he appeared. He stepped out from the darkness, his twisted grin illuminated by the pale light of the moon. His teeth gleamed, and his eyes glinted with a sadistic glee. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling but steady enough to carry my fear. He laughed loud and unhinged, a sound that seemed to echo through the trees. "What do I want?" he mocked, his voice dripping with malice. "I want to see what you look like on the inside." Before I could react, he lunged at me. His sheer size overwhelmed me as we crashed to the ground. I fought with everything I had, punching, kicking, and clawing. But it was like hitting a brick wall. He didn't even flinch. I wasn't weak, but he was relentless, a force of pure, sick insanity. In the chaos, I managed to plunge the knife deep into his chest. He froze for a split second, and I shoved him off with all my strength. His body hit the snow, and I didn't wait to see if he'd get back up. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, the cold air tearing at my throat. It took me nearly 2 hours to make it back to my truck. When I finally reached it, I threw myself inside and started the engine, my hands shaking on the wheel as I sped down the icy road. Relief flooded me, but it didn't last long. I saw him, the same twisted man, sitting upright in the bed of an old pickup just ahead of me. Someone must have found him, maybe thought he was a victim of some attack. My stomach dropped. He wasn't dead. I couldn't let him go. I had to stop him. I sped after the truck, flashing my lights and honking until the driver pulled over. I jumped out, breathless, and told him everything. The man nodded, confused but concerned, so we walked to the back of the truck together. But when we looked, the bed was empty. He was gone. No blood, no tracks, just an eerie silence in the early morning air. That was 27 years ago, and I've never seen him again. I've kept my ears open, but no one matching his description has ever been caught or reported. I don't know if he died out there in the woods or if he's still out there, living some other life. Wherever you are, you sick freak, I hope I never see you again.